Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for that warm welcome. I'm going to figure out how to use the slide mover. Here we go. Australia generates around 75 million tonnes of waste each year. And the Australian government, we've heard a lot with speakers at this conference, has set an ambitious target of 80% recovery by 2030. So meeting those targets and getting that policy right would be impossible without the individuals in this room, the organisations that you represent, and importantly, the people and residents that you represent. So it's why this conference, the Waste Conference at Coffs Harbour, is such a valuable forum for us to discuss issues and opportunities for our sector. So thank you for having me. So going back to that ambitious target, current recovery rates are 66%. And while we should be proud of the journey that we've been on, we've got just 5 short years until 2030, and so a lot needs to be done in a very short period of time. So why does it matter? A significant amount of material continues to end up in landfill, contributing to environmental degradation, increased greenhouse gases, and the loss of valuable recyclable materials. Landfills are responsible for about 30% of Australia's greenhouse gas emissions, methane emissions. To put this into perspective, over its lifetime, a tonne of paper decomposing in landfill produces more greenhouse gas than burning a tonne of coal. Let me say that again for anyone who thinks that I may have just misspoken. Over its lifetime, a tonne of paper decomposing in landfill produces more greenhouse gas emissions than burning a tonne of coal. So recycling is a powerful weapon against climate change and can do some heavy lifting in our efforts to combat it. We have a real opportunity to do better by keeping recyclable materials out of landfill and in circulation to be made back into new products. Today, I'm going to share with you 5 key principles that Visy believes are essential to strengthen Australia's recycling system for the future. And they are, number 1, that packaging must be designed for recycling within current systems. If we want to increase Australia's recovery rate, it all starts here. We simply can't recycle what wasn't designed to be recycled in the first place. Number 2, Australia must take responsibility for its own waste. We need to ensure that Australia can recycle the material that we consume, so we're not at the mercy of global disturbances in the supply chain. Not only this, but it's the right thing to do for a developed country that prides itself on its environmental responsibility. Number 3, being transparent about what happens to recycling and what is not recyclable. A sustainable system requires transparency across the entire supply chain, from collection and sorting to processing and remanufacturing. This includes being honest about what is and what isn't recyclable so that people can confidently sort their waste. Number 4, strong end markets. Strong end markets are essential to help pull material through the system. Materials collected through the household recycling bin must have scalable, economically viable, and sustainable end markets. And last but certainly not least, harmonisation and standardisation to address contamination and increase recovery rates. Contamination reduces the recovery rate of valuable materials. Tackling it starts with national alignment of what can and can't be recycled in the curbside bins and the makeup of those bins. So let's explore principle 1. When we think about recycling, it's easy to focus on the process of putting the materials into the yellow bin and trusting that they're going to be sorted into their respective categories. However, true recycling goes far beyond that. Materials are not recycled until they're remade into new products, and this is a crucial distinction. Sorry, it's a bit slow. it's not recycled until it's made into new products. So recycling is not just a waste management process. It's a circular economy that encompasses local recycling and remanufacturing with the end of life in mind. So let's redefine recycling. According to the Australian Packaging Covenant Organisation, only 56% of post-consumer packaging that's placed on the market is currently recovered. Increasing this is straightforward. We must design the packaging formats to be recycled within the capabilities of the existing curbside recycling systems. If a format cannot be recovered in this way, then it should be supported through extended producer responsibility schemes that are outside of the curbside system. Designing packaging for curbside recovery means that we can make use of that infrastructure that already exists instead of creating costly and inefficient parallel systems. And this approach benefits the environment too. It reduces the need for virgin materials and can even cut energy use. For example, a Visy glass bottle made with 70% recycled content uses up to 30% less energy than one made entirely of virgin material. The second principle, Australia must take responsibility for our own waste. If we're serious about increasing Australia's waste recovery, we must begin by taking full responsibility for the waste that we generate. In the last financial year, Australia exported just over 1 million tonnes of paper and cardboard. That's enough paper and cardboard to fill the MCG 5 times. And in the same period, Australia exported around 60,000 tonnes of plastic. And this material was sent to Southeast Asian countries in general. The implementation of the China sword policy in 2018 should serve as a lesson about the vulnerabilities inherent in relying on international markets for our waste management. Overnight, Australia's recycling faced a significant disruption. We saw increased stockpiling of materials, pressure on landfill, and higher costs for local councils. More recently, as at the 1st of January this year, Thailand had banned the import of all plastic waste, and this move signals a trend that should be a warning to us all. So strengthening Australia's domestic recycling capability is key to building economic resilience, and by processing more material locally, we can reduce our reliance on global markets and create a stable and sustainable waste management system. Not only is processing our waste here key to our economic resilience, but it's also the right thing to do as a country that prides ourselves in action on environmental responsibility. Australia has a mature and capable environmental regulation system. When we keep our waste here, we know in most cases that it will be managed effectively. We cannot say the same when we export our waste. Export regulations are often not stringent enough to prevent the export of contaminated materials. In this image, the slide shows a container that would be used to export mixed paper. And even at less than 5% contamination, the material on the floor gives you an idea of the waste that can be contained in that, the non-fibre waste, and that's about a tonne. In the context of this year's conference theme, Local Action, Global Impact, I impress upon all of you, if we really care about the environment, we must have a local solution for the waste that we generate. The safest way forward is to close the loop here at home. Remanufacturing in Australia removes economic risk and it creates opportunity. All levels of government have a role to play in this, and it was great to hear from the Minister this morning in policy, procurement, in how they engage with recycling and manufacturing. Federal governments and state governments are beginning to take positive steps to drive policies that mandate the use of recycled content and encourage sustainable packaging design. Local governments, similarly, are driving change through smarter contracts and clearer expectations when it comes to choosing waste providers and what they do with the materials that they collect. So principle number 3, this is all about transparency. A sustainable system must be built on transparency. True accountability starts when we process waste here in Australia and hold industry responsible for disclosing where the waste ends up. This responsibility spans the entire supply chain, from the design of packaging to on-pack claims, collection, sorting methods, processing, and finally remanufacturing. I think I skipped one, sorry, thank you. So too often we see green claims that packaging is able to be recycled when it isn't within the current systems. Multi-layered packaging is an example of this. It's made by combining multiple different materials such as plastics, aluminium and paper into a single structure to improve performance, shelf life or durability. And these layers are tightly bonded and impossible to separate through a MRF. So when they pass through a MRF or a materials recovery facility, there's no scenario where that's going to end up as anything other than contaminant in a stream. If it goes to aluminium, the paper and plastics are contaminants. If it goes to plastics, the paper and foil are contaminants, and so on. It's not designed to be recycled through the curbside bin. So to increase recovery, we need brand owners to choose recyclable packaging formats, packaging manufacturers to lead on material design and innovation, government policy that prioritises recycled content and recoverability, and recyclers to be honest about what happens to material. Communities cannot be expected to improve recycling practices if they're left in the dark. Nearly half of Australians, 41%, don't trust that their recycling is recycled, and 18% believe that it ends up in landfill. So we have some work to do. This scepticism is a major barrier to improving recycling rates. When people doubt the system, they're less likely to participate. And councils can play a key role in rebuilding this trust, but only if they're equipped with accurate, timely information from industry. And with that information, councils can help educate communities and build confidence and encourage better recycling behaviours. So at Visy, we've sought to introduce some ways to make that process easier, so like our virtual material recovery tour and regular reports to councils about what we do with the contents of residents' recycling bins. Transparency is not just about accountability for industry, it's a powerful driver of behavioural change. 1 in 3 Australians say they would recycle more if they had proof that their efforts were making a difference. Principle number 4, strong end markets. A successful recycling system depends not just on collection and processing, but on creating strong, scalable, and sustainable end markets for the recovered materials. For packaging to be truly circular, there must be consistent, economically viable offtake for those recovered materials. For packaging to be the good news, so Australia already has the capability and the capacity and end markets for much of the material that's accepted through the curbside recycling bin today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Let's have a look at the indicative makeup of an average recycling bin in terms of those recyclables. So the largest portion is paper and cardboard. Visy's paper mills across Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland are already producing 100% recycled paper to be made into new cardboard boxes. In recent years, Visy's invested significantly to increase our domestic mixed paper recycling capability. So the installation of a state-of-the-art drum pulper has helped us to increase the amount of mixed paper that we can process, and we're now recycling more mixed paper in the drum pulper than commercially sourced paper. Additional upgrades in Queensland and New South Wales now means that we have the capacity to recycle all of the mixed paper received through our curbside councils and beyond. The next largest portion of material is glass. We already have bottle-to-bottle recycling capability in Australia. So Visy's Australian and New Zealand produced bottles and jars are made with an average of 64% recycled content, and this figure is as high as 96% in some of our green and amber, so the darker coloured bottles. Small fragments of glass that can't be recovered for bottle to bottle are still put to good use and downcycled as road base. This is our Laverton glass facility in Victoria. We've made a significant investment there to secure onshore glass manufacturing, and our investments have allowed us to recover even more material, with a recent upgrade of this facility allowing us to sort glass down to 3 millimetres, where previously we could only get down to 10 millimetres. Visy's new glass and recycling manufacturing hub in Queensland, which is currently under construction, this will be completed next year, and it's equipped with world-class sorting and manufacturing capability. Next is plastic. So our recovery for rigid plastics is improving. PET and HDPE now have growing local options, even for food-grade applications. So we want that recovered for its best and highest use, bottle to bottle. Our recycled plastics and remanufacturing facilities are making milk bottles with 50% HDPE and drink bottles with 100% recycled PET. So the equivalent of 1.9 billion plastic bottles are being prevented or diverted from landfill or export overseas each year. We're seeing an increase in the recoverability of polypropylene, though it still lacks food-grade capability in remanufacturing. And others, like PVC, that's a big hurry up, like PVC and polystyrene continue to be problematic, but there's innovative replacements emerging, and Visy is working on one such one for expanded polystyrene, which is Visy Cell and is recyclable through the curbside bin. There are other substrates that aren't circular. There's been a lot of discussion at this conference around soft plastics. We've seen what happens when offtake doesn't keep pace. And that's a real problem for us, stockpiles of highly flammable material, and importantly, a loss of trust in recycling. So we've got a challenge ahead of us with around 500,000 tonnes of plastics placed on market every year and around 20,000 tonnes of soft plastics capability today. So we need to look at the waste hierarchy there and look to reduce that and substitute it in the first instance and then consider the alternatives. But I will say that a process that takes the soft plastic material through a MRF will only increase the contamination of that material compared with collecting it in a dedicated stream. And it also reduces recovery rates for genuinely recyclable material. So the hard truth is that even with the most sophisticated collection system, without processing capability in markets, the majority of soft plastics is still going to end up in landfill. Lastly, and I will sort of brush over this a little bit. Batteries, I don't want to diminish the problem, but I've been given the 2-minute hurry up. So there's been a lot of talk about that. We have to fix this issue. They continue to be disposed of in the household recycling bins. They shouldn't go in any bin. These endanger workers and damage infrastructure and disrupt the entire recycling process. And this is a slide of our Drompulper rejects conveyor. And so I just want to talk a little bit about more broadly how contamination like soft plastics in the bin actually affects the recovery of good things like fibre to be made into new boxes and paper. So here you can see some soft plastics on the conveyor, but you also see some brown fibre, and that's valuable fibre and water that are ejected in the process. So tackling this takes a nationwide alignment of what can and can't be recycled in the curbside bin. So nationally standardising what goes in the bin and harmonising the bins, adapting clear labelling, standardised for packaging that aligns with the bin colour system, so we can reduce confusion, cut contamination and make it easier for Australians to do the right thing. This is one of the most impactful steps that we can take to increase our national recycling performance. In summary, the future of recycling is circular, local and transparent, but achieving that is only possible if we work together to strengthen the sector through the principles I've outlined. We must design packaging to be recycled within our current systems, take responsibility for our own waste, ensure accountability and transparency throughout the entire supply chain, build strong and scalable end markets, reduce contamination through harmonisation and standardisation. And with the right policy settings, industry collaboration and investment in domestic capability, Australia can build a more resilient, effective and trusted recycling system that's fit for the future. So thank you.